I want to show you a new paper on the structure of the brain. It's a fascinating paper, and if the results hold up, they falsify the theory of evolution. Here is the press release. Brain's structure hangs in a delicate balance. Now, as we'll see, what they're talking about is an optimized state. New finding appears to be universal across insects, mammals, and humans. So what they discovered is that the cellular structure of the animal brains they looked at is fractal or self-similar. Now, what does that mean? Let me show you an example. If you look at where that arrow is pointing at that little dot, if you were to zoom in on it, it would look like that little triangle. If you were to zoom in on that, it would look like that. If you were to zoom in on that, it would look like that. If you were to zoom in on that, it would look like that. If you were to zoom in on that, it would look like that. If you were to zoom on that, it would look like that. So the point is, they're all the same, no matter what your zoom level. They're all the same. That's self-similarity. Here are some related terms if you want to look further into this. Brain cells are arranged in a fractal-like statistical pattern at different scales. When zoomed in, the fractal shapes are self-similar, meaning that smaller parts of the sample resemble the whole sample. Self-similarity, long-range correlations, and broad-size distributions are all signatures of a critical state, where features are neither too organized nor too random. So that's this optimized state I was referring to. These are things we see in all critical systems in physics. Okay, so this is the journal paper. This is a peer-reviewed top journal that this work was published in. We show evidence that brain anatomy satisfies universal scaling laws, establishing the notion of structural criticality in the cellular structure of the brain. Our framework builds upon understanding of critical systems. This is fantastic. Now, back to our illustration of self-similarity, you may have been wondering, how could that evolve? Well, to be frank, it wouldn't. If you wanted to think up evidence falsifying evolution, this would be one. The cellular structure of animal brains is fractal. A mutation doesn't make that. A mutation doesn't make part of that. It would require a long sequence, and I mean a long sequence, thousands and thousands of mutations with no obvious benefit. These would be just so mutations with no obvious benefit in order to create this sort of self-similarity property. It just doesn't make sense on evolution. What do they say? Let's skip down. The observation that scaling relations hold between independently measured critical exponents is what? Strong evidence that the cellular structure of the brain has evolved to be at, or at least close to, a state of criticality as understood in physical systems. Well, you probably saw the teleology in that passage, but it's also just simply a tautology. Let me paraphrase the passage. Essentially what they're saying is, we observe self-similarity, so it is strong evidence the brain has evolved to be self-similar. So not only is it teleological, it's a tautology. Let's go down to a passage below. It is intriguing to consider that the brain may have evolved a cellular structure close to criticality in order to aid formation of near-optimal network properties. Actually, it's not intriguing, it is teleological. Let's take another look at that passage. This is really important. I want to make this crystal clear. The brain may have evolved a cellular structure close to criticality in order to aid formation of near-optimal network properties. That is teleological. That is a final cause. They are identifying a final cause of evolution that is strictly disallowed in evolutionary theory. But once again, we see it used to avoid the absurdity of evolutionary theory. When they say in order to aid, they are identifying the objective, the goal of evolution. Evolution has a goal, an objective, according to this paper. Again, strictly disallowed, but it's used. It is pervasive in the literature to avoid the absurdity. Once again, a failure of evolution is masked with teleology. This is teleology. Religion drives science, and it matters.